This is going to be the commencement of City of West Miami Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting. The date is April 19th, 2023. We will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Next item, please.
Next item, roll call. Ivan Chavez Jr., Commissioner, Recreation Committee Chair.
Here.
Miguel Casanova.
Present.
Ivan Chavez Sr.
Presente.
Alexander Diaz.
Here.
Zachariah Evangelista.
Here.
Marcos Lopez.
Here.
And Cristina Barona is excused. You have quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item.
Item 4, approval of minutes of April 5th, 2023, Recreation Advisory Board meeting.
You have a motion for that?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Are all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you.
Next item.
Item 5, old business, none this evening. Item 6, new business. Item 6A, discussion revisiting the tennis pickleball courts project at the West Miami Recreation Center.
So I called this meeting again because I watched the last meeting back, and I think there was some confusion. Some residents as well were kind of confused with some of the happenings of that last meeting. So I don't know if everyone voted on that with the complete understanding of what was happening, whether or not we had the funding for it. So
I was confused. I thought there was no money left, money at all. That's why I thought we shouldn't vote on it.
yeah. So we can open it up for discussion again and kind of go through the process and then have a vote at the end again. So we'll talk about what we have in the reserves, how much the projects are costing us. We already spent $90,000 more or less for the playground equipment. We have a bid right now for $94,000 for that,
$94,000 for the pickleball.
for the pickleball courts. And then the lights was what the discussion was last time, was gonna cost too much to accomplish without the FERDAP grant this go around. So the conversation was if we were gonna move forward and do the pickleball / tennis courts with the money that the commission had already kind of decided to spend anyhow, the $200,000 that we were gonna be using to match the FERDAP grant. So we'll open it up for discussion.
So the amount to get the pickleball court was how much?
$94,000.
And we had allocated 200 and something?
$200,000 was what we had agreed to spend to match the FERDAP grant. It was gonna be a total of $400,000. FERDAP grant fell through, and we were left with the decision of what to move forward with. The lights were no longer really part of that equation. They were gonna cost too much. I think the bid was $259,000. And after spending the $90,000 on the playground, we were left with $110,000 more or less of that $200 that we were willing to spend initially.
So what do we have
110.
in the reserves? 110?
Well, 110 is what we have left of what we were gonna spend of that 200,000.
Right, that was approved.
In the reserves, we have,
But the 110 is actually committed, it should be committed to the gym equipment, the wellness center.
no, I was saying the
the
110
capital.
is what we have left of that 200,000 that we were gonna use to match the 200 of FERDAP.
What happened to the?
Right.
Okay,
We
if
withdrew.
we have $400,000, we lost $200,000 from the grant. So it's
Right.
about $200,000 left, right? Am I right?
Well, 90,000
We spent
went
90.
To the playground.
Playground
Because
equipment.
it was already in the works.
Yeah, so let's do this then. That 200,000 was gonna come from where?
The $200,000, the match was coming from impact fees.
From impact fees.
Right.
So then what do we have
So
in?
what we're doing is the whole wellness center, if you would, is being paid for by impact fees. So we got that. We withdrew from the FERDAP grant because we were not able to complete the grant within the stipulated time, and I want to say, in an overabundance of caution, as Mr. Villalobos would say, we withdrew from the grant because if we did not complete it by April 30th, it would spoil our opportunities to apply for future grants. Okay?
Okay.
So now what you have is, you have committed almost 100% of impact fees to the wellness center project. You have $120,000 that we budgeted for capital outlay in this year's budget that came from the reserves that the rec center is generating. And 20,000 of that, Mr. Penna, was committed to the rec center for the AC, correct? One AC. It was 140.
140 went
And
down to
we-
120.
Exactly, so we have $120,000, which our recommendation, or my recommendation would be, let's purchase the gym equipment and whatever, because if you leave a building, you have to equip it and use it for the purpose intended. So,
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Manager. I think that because the 200,000 that we were using to match the FERDAP grant was coming from reserves.
no, it was coming from impact fees.
Didn't we spend the rest of the impact fee money on the bathrooms? The 200,000
We
had to remove
united
them?
the bathroom now and the wellness center for the sake of the project.
And that was depleting the rest of our impact
And
fees.
that was depleting the rest
So
of the
then the
impact
200,000 that we were gonna use to match the FERDAP grant was coming from reserves.
From reserves, exactly.
So then this
Now-
is a different
Right,
pool that we're talking about.
Right.
Is there, I'm sorry, is there, when you say reserves,
that means.
is there more than one reserves?
No, the recreation center is a separate enterprise fund, and it has its own reserves,
That's why I'm
and
asking.
it balances its own budget.
So the rec has its own reserves,
Yes.
and then the city has its own
Reserves,
reserves.
correct.
That's what was confusing me.
Correct,
So
Correct.
then there's two things we're talking about, is the 200,000 that was coming from reserves, that was gonna be used to match the FERDAP
Right.
grant,
right,
and then the 120,000 which was allocated from impact fees.
right.
And
So two
where is the
separate.
No,
90,000?
120,000 was, 140 was budgeted, and we're left with 120 to purchase the equipment in the wellness center.
And this
Impact fees.
120 is coming from impact fees.
That 120 is basically money from reserves that we were able to allocate towards capital
Right, it's
outlay.
already budgeted, so
It's
it's already
budgeted,
something,
exactly.
so moving forward, what do we have in
Okay,
reserve?
you had a $500,000 reserve unaudited. Unaudited means the auditors are gonna come in, and when they give us a report, I don't know if they're gonna depreciate any of the infrastructure at the rec. That means our finance department basically gave them revenues versus expenses. And we had a surplus that we had been building over the years. The rec center was doing well, money-wise, and so that surplus allowed us to reach a total amount of $500,000, give or take. It's still, the audit is not complete yet, so I cannot tell you with a certain degree of assurance, if you would.
Within that range.
Exactly, but we have approximately 500,000. But now we had to pay for the playground that was supposed to be funded by the FERDAP grant. So we spent close to $90,000 with the purchase and installation of that playground at the park. So that's gonna deplete your 500K this year that ends September 30th by $90,000.
Down to approximately 410.
So you're talking about, we have approximately 410 starting on October 1st next fiscal year.
So what we have to discuss then is, this was 500,000 when the commission voted to use 200,000 to match the FERDAP grant. So we already decided to use 200,000, and it was gonna be for a project of the lights, the tennis courts, and the playground. FERDAP grant is off the table now, but we already had agreed to use $200,000 for those three projects.
Okay.
Because there's no 200,000 from FERDAP, the lights are out of the equation now. But do we still move forward with the playground, which we already did, so we have no choice there, and the tennis courts? That's the decision that we have to make tonight. The amount in reserves that we have and all that, that was already something that went into the decision in the past to move forward with those projects. So now we have to decide if we
So
still
that money
want
was already
to.
allocated for,
Say again?
the money was allocated already. It was approved by the
The
commission.
commission already decided to
move
with
the
those
money,
projects, and this board did too.
Okay,
So this
good.
board
Okay.
recommended to the commission, and the commission agreed and moved forward with it. So we all agreed that we wanted those three projects done. We don't have the money from the state anymore, so we can't do the lights anymore.
Right.
But do we still want to move forward with the pickleball courts? Go ahead. Andy.
Before we advance, my understanding from the last meeting was that we were all in agreement on the lighting on the tennis courts would not match the pickleball courts.
I went over there I've been there nights, I was like the Thursday night I played, and I was walking around there. It's not bad. You can play at night. I mean, you can play at night pickleball.
So I was
I don't
approached
think it's
by
that
different
bad.
people off this board and basically saying that they were confused with how everything was worded. There was a bunch of conversations happening. So I decided to bring this meeting back to air it out again for the public to watch and see how we go about it, just specifically on this topic. So
Because then the lights would be replaced eventually.
eventually the
and
lights
then
will be
it's gonna,
replaced.
Now,
you know,
there is another funding cycle coming up. The funding cycle should be announced any time between July 12th and August 12th for a grant cycle. However, that goes through next year's legislative session. And so if we are awarded successfully next year, then you have enough reserves to pledge, or to match that project, and you can leave that lighting project for the next grant cycle.
And that's my feeling as well, that right now the decision was already made to move forward with this project in the past. FERDAP falling through, nothing else changes. We just lost the money for the lights, which was unfortunate. The lights are important, but we can go after them in the next grant cycle. But the other two projects, we're still going to, say FERDAP didn't fall through, we had money with FERDAP to do the baseball field lights. We still weren't gonna be doing the lights of the tennis courts, but we had voted to move forward with that project anyhow. So nothing changes there. Well, all it changed was we're not getting the lights for the baseball field, which was unfortunate, and they're very important lights, but there's nothing we can do about that. So all that we can do now is decide of whether or not we wanna move forward with the projects that we voted on before. And there was confusion of whether or not we had the funding to do so, and the
Right.
funding hasn't changed. The money that was lost was money that was lost that we could have done the lights with. Everything else, status
But
quo.
at the end of the day, you didn't lose money, because even if you didn't have the grant, we needed to replace a playground equipment, which
Right.
was old and it was already visibly deteriorated. And you know what happens, they start getting rusty, and that's a liability for the children
Absolutely.
and for the public,
So the two projects we're talking about are the playground,
which is
Which is
done,
done.
it's
That's
done, and the pickleball courts.
correct.
My big concern, honestly, last time I was confused about it was, I thought, I got caught up in the whole 200,000, and I kept thinking, man, if we spend the money on the pickleballs, then we deplete the reserves.
No,
But the reserves, from what I understand now, is we're at like around 410-ish.
for tennis,
We've already gotten the blessing on doing pickleballs for how much?
94.
94.
For 94, which would end up leaving, 300 and
Exactly.
something reserves. So that was my concern, and now I'm unconfused. So I'll go along with the board. I'm okay with, I think the citizen would rather see something getting done.
Right.
And we're not even close to depleting the reserves at that time, so, which was my concern. My concern was to leave it at zero bubble.
That's what I thought too. They wouldn't
Because
have
we
no money.
we got caught up in the whole 200,000, 200,000. I
No,
think
it's
that,
matching the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the 200,000 was gonna be a pledge from
Right, right.
impact fee. So then we decided, that's it, we're gonna fund the project because we couldn't we couldn't move forward with the grant. So we knew that we had the additional reserves, which are city reserves, revenues versus expenses.
I'll add too that this isn't us deciding to spend money on new pickleball courts that this is a tennis court that has to be resurfaced. So in that design of the new resurfacing, we're adding pickleball courts. So it's not money that
We're
we're
not
going
changing
out.
the layout?
We are changing the layout, but we aren't adding,
it's a paint job,
it's a
basically.
paint job.
Or we're
so-
just painting, so we're not like removing the lights and putting,
Asphalt,
Right,
center
so that
pole being removed.
oh, the poles have to be, so there won't be
Between-
lights?
between
No,
the
no,
two
no,
tennis
no,
courts.
Will to remain, but
Oh,
the center are
the
gone.
center lights will be
Between
gone.
the two tennis courts, you have that grass with the
Yeah.
benches and stuff, that's all gonna get removed and paved.
Those trees will
The
be
tennis
gone
We're
too.
gonna lose half the lights.
No, why?
No,
That's what Mr. Penna
Those
just
are
said.
the lights in the middle.
The two lights in the middle will be gone.
and then we address it in the next grant cycle.
Right, now we can apply for 2 grants, at the same time. There are large grants that are the ones that, the $200,000 grant with a $200,000 match. Or you can go for a small grant for $50,000 and try to address the lighting where the pickleball courts are or the tennis courts are. or you can address the lighting at the baseball field. You could do a number of things with 2 grants.
And just a reminder too, that we didn't have the lights for the tennis courts in this package.
Right.
It was the lights for the baseball field, so we were moving forward with this idea regardless
Regardless
of
of
whether or
lights.
not we had FERDAP. So I understand the concerns now, but
Yeah,
nothing changes on the tennis courts. This is what we were gonna do to begin with, and then later on, try to do the lights in the tennis courts, inevitably the basketball courts at some point again, so it's an evolving cycle, we have to get what we can when we can, so.
Does this include fencing?
I think Mr. Bernard mentioned that we might be able to do
Small
that.
fence between the pickleball court and the new 2 tennis.
Yeah, like a little 3-footer or something?
and the
Yeah,
fence that's already
separation.
there,
But this stuff
the,
gets done
the
in-house,
exterior
right?
fence,
Yeah,
Would-
that's
would remain?
operational. the
or
fencing.
it's gonna get knocked down?
Remains.
It remains, okay.
Only
Yeah.
gets knocked down if later on they go with adding the other 2 past the construction site where the racquetball court used to be.
Okay,
The same area that we have now there where the 2 tennis court are, we'll be able to fit 2 tennis court plus 2 pickleball, right, on the same area.
No,
no,
you're uniting the center.
I know, but the same area, the
Yeah.
same, area is in the fence, the
Yes.
fence out.
up to the batting cages, right?
Yes.
So that's gonna be gone.
No,
No,
that's
no,
batting
Oh,
cages
that's,
are
batting
there
ca-
still.
oh, they're gonna, so
Where the
it's-
tennis court, where the
oh,
tennis
it's the
court is
same
now,
exact space, oh,
That's
okay.
where the swimming pool's gonna go.
And then, and then
second floor.
With the slide,
adding
huh?
the lights in the
Yeah.
future, there shouldn't be an issue, right?
Candy's.
Okay,
They
so
board.
Oh my
we're not gonna
gosh.
have to tear up the courts that we just built,
Like
right?
a burrow, yeah.
Okay, alright,
So that's what we have to decide upon here. If we wanna move forward with something that we already voted on before, excluding the lights because we don't have the funding from the state. Nothing else has changed, it's the exact same thing that we voted on before. Understanding that we need lights, same thing that we discussed last time, and
You gotta upgrade them sooner or later.
at some point, we're gonna have to upgrade them, and hopefully in the next grant cycle, we can address that.
One, Mandy Hernandez, I don't know if you know, I know Rafael, the guy from R&D Electric, which one that was gonna do the job at the lighting, and he spoke with him, I said, if we ever need any repairs on those lights that we have now, he will give us a good price. So I know he played softball with us all the time, so if we ever need him, we can call R&D, and we'll get we can say he'll give a good price. That's what he told us. So, we have that on our side.
Everything in the park is cyclical, the lights, the resurfacing of the basketball courts, the tennis courts, the baseball field. So if we keep putting off one thing, they're gonna start to overlap.
We never get done.
You're gonna start to overlap, and
Then
you're
you're
gonna,
looking at a massive project down the
it's gonna
road.
become a lot bigger of an
Did,
issue.
did we apply for 2 grants last year or just 1?
Just one.
We
You
have-
have another grant for Cooper Park.
The
Yeah,
gym
that's the one,
equipment.
that's
For
the
the
one that.
That one is still
it's
unknown
still-
whether
but
we're
we
gonna
didn't
be
apply for
funded.
$200,000 last year,
Yeah,
no?
that goes in July 1st of this year, we're awarded, then they work the contract, and generally by September of 2023, we'll have that contract to start at Cooper Park. But that's just a cycle for the grants.
And it had to be done before April of the following year.
No, they give you 2 years
Oh, 2
or
years.
3 years, it all depends. The
Depends.
magnitude of the project,
Okay,
it all depends.
all right.
Look, at the end of the day, that tennis court has to be resurfaced, whether or not
Yeah.
pickleball courts and all that, it has to be resurfaced. So if we're doing it, the big thing that's changing the lights is because we're getting rid of that center grassy area where the
Right.
benches are and all that, but that's the only way to fit pickleball courts in there, because the tennis court slides over closer to the other one. And then we address the lights in the next grant cycle.
and this also includes with the $97,000 price, the nets, right? So it's a finished product
It's
essentially,
a turnkey operation, right? Pretty much one?
yeah,
It includes the nets as
Yep.
well?
the poles and the
The
nets,
poles and the nets for the pickleball.
and the tennis courts, yeah.
And the players.
Some trainers,
Yeah.
That's Commissioner, Blanes, he can,
yeah.
he
We
can
get some
help out with
volunteer work
the
here.
He
tennis.
says
training.
a real tennis player doesn't play pickleball.
Oh,
Tell Andre I can see that.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
But any further discussion on this?
So the city feels comfortable with the 3 something that would be left in reserves
320.
for the.
I am not, okay, I get paid through May 30th to be the watchdog and of the city's finances. That's my job. And I would never, I would caution the commission to spend unwisely. But I also understand that there are needs, and there's from what I hear, that there is the pickleball is very popular in Miami-Dade County and elsewhere. And it's an amenity that will bring people to the park, and it's maybe an amenity that we can charge, and try to get some revenue out of it. I would hope that our millage rate and our tax money will stay intact so that we can continue to build upon what we have. That would be, and if you are gonna spend, you spend wisely. Look at a project, you have 5 projects, but maybe identify one which is the biggest priority, that has the more, participation from the public. It's just that simple. It's like with your house. Maybe, you can't afford to redo your 2 bathrooms. So which bathroom is more important, which
More
one?
bang for the buck.
Exactly. It's the same type of analogy that I'm using.
What's the monthly operating budget for the rec?
Monthly, we do this on a yearly basis.
Okay, so what's the yearly?
John, hi. We'll pick your brain. Without impact fee, and I'm gonna say without impact fee because this year that number's inflated because we have $1 million from impact fee coming in from impact fee, and it shows as a revenue, and you show it as an expense for the construction of the wellness center. Without the $1 million, I say we have about a $750,000 to $800,000 proposition.
And what's that gonna look like when the wellness center opens?
$750,000, $800,000.
To operate the rec?
To operate the rec.
So our operations cost isn't gonna change greatly.
It all depends on what happens with the assessed values, and that comes out June 1st. By then, I will not be the city manager. My resignation is effective May 30th. I will hopefully stay on as an advisor to the new manager, and whenever he or she is elected, then I'm at the disposal of the manager to work on projects or be his or her advisor. So I want to say that there's been an adjustment in the market. I don't think we've seen a huge drop in property taxes, but I think there has been an adjustment. I mean, a typical house that last year sold for $650,000, it's probably at $500,000, $550,000. So there has been an adjustment, a trend, if you would.
I guess what I'm asking is,
So-
if the asteroid hits tomorrow,
Yeah.
the rainy day money
The
comes from the city's reserves, not the rec's reserves?
No. It comes from the rec. The rec is an independent enterprise fund. It does not live from any money that the general
But
fund
historically, what have we
provides.
used rec reserves for? For projects of the reserve?
For projects.
Or do we have to keep a certain amount in there by law?
You
to
should
operate it?
keep
Percentage.
a percentage, but you should keep a fairly large amount, because when these grants come through, and you need money to leverage with the grants.
And what's
So you
what's
should-
the biggest grant? The 200.
The 200,000
We
so
have
far.
300
Yeah.
So
change,
far.
and we'll
That's
still
why we
be-
didn't want to drop too much
Do
more.
we
But
still,
you have to keep in mind, and I won't be the person working on the budget, you have to keep in mind that now you have a wellness center that you have to operate. You're gonna need a minimum, if you're gonna open it 7 days a week, and I'm just speaking here from my experience here, you gotta have at least 3 people if you're gonna open that rec Monday through Sunday, and you're going to have a full-time monitor, if you wanna call it, and you're gonna have another 2 people because you have to create shifts, and you keep your costs down because nobody's gonna work 7 days a week, all day and all night. So you have those costs. You have to have a custodian. Reason being, if you drop something, if any liquid, water, or anything spills, you have a liability issue. You need to keep those bathrooms spick and span clean. So you're going to have operational expenses. And if I were a betting woman, with benefits and everything, just to kick it off, we're looking at $150,000, $160,000 a year. Penna, are you with me here?
And that-
John?
Yes.
Am I so far so good?
And
Okay.
Well,
shortfalls
it's-
can be covered from the rec reserve.
Shortfalls can be covered from their, yeah, but now that, then you're depleting it.
Yeah.
Yes.
but-
They're
Well,
depleting.
Do we,
Let
do-
me,
I get all that, and believe me,
Right.
when it comes to, that's why I'm asking all these finance questions, because that's how I run my household too.
Now,
I don't,
can the
Right.
general fund come and bail the rec out?
I don't know.
It
Yes.
can.
Okay,
Okay,
but I'm
okay,
talking
housing
about-
and maintenance.
I can.
In terms of the rec though,
But again, the general fund is where it has never been in the 40 years that I have been here. When I started working here, January 21st, 1982, we had $2 million in general fund reserves. And we had $2 million in water department reserves when I started working here. Those are audited numbers. When I became manager, we had a 52% overall deficit in the budget in every fund. And as of the day that I tendered my retirement letter or resignation letter to the commission, we had $2.3 million unaudited. The auditors have not delivered their report. I don't know what it's looking at, like. They do, due to from funds, they depreciate, utilities. So I don't know what it's gonna look like. I'm expecting it's going to look good. And I am also expecting that come September 30th of this year, irrespective of whether I'm here or not, we're going to have like a $2.8 million surplus. Can it come to bail out the rec? Yes. Is it good practice?
no, and this is why I bring these things up, because,
If we have a,
hold on,
sorry,
hold on,
if we-
hold on, let me finish.
Yes.
Because I'm a simpleton and I'll lose my train of thought. This is why I bring these things up and why I'm always concerned about having enough money to pay for this and that. But there does come a time when you have to spend money to make money. So if we're gonna be
Definitely.
increasing the operating budget of the rec by bringing in employees or whatever, you need to build things like the pickleball court that's
And-
gonna attract more people and give you the opportunity
And
to
the
bring in
gym.
another revenue stream.
And the gym.
let
And the
me-
gym as well.
And let me bring it back to the topic of, this is not a new amenity, this is resurfacing a tennis court that has to be done periodically. When was the last time it was done?
7, 8 years ago, Planner?
2005.
And typically, how
Time
long
flies.
does it take to?
I
how
was a
often do we
baby
do
back
that?
then.
How often do we typically resurface a tennis court?
Every 10, 15 years.
So this is something that's already towards the tail end of its lifespan. We're adding
We're
pickleball
doing it,
courts
we
to
gotta
it, but
do
it's
it
not a
anyways.
new expense. It's something that has to get done every 10,
Yolanda,
15 years.
do
So
we still get a police come out of the city, out of the park budget?
The police officer that is assigned to the park is charged to the park.
Still be charged?
Yes.
They've been doing that for
Yes.
years,
I mean,
forever.
that is, no.
We
This year, we did it, to fund the officer because of the situation and the volatile situation in the country with all these mass shootings at, daycares and schools.
That's not, but it's always been, because I remember back then it used to be charged a police officer.
No,
to-
that happened a couple of years when the city was financially,
Right.
it's
Well, that-
struggling.
That was taken away.
That was taken away, but now we fund Officer Murciela.
Yeah, because he's there.
Exactly.
That's
He's
great.
assigned to the park.
Out of curiosity, the periodic resurfacing of the courts, is this amount in the ballpark of what you normally would, obviously it's 15 years
If
later.
it's just the tennis courts, 50, yeah.
50,000.
Okay, so, and we're getting a few extra things in there, so it's not out of,
well, it's 50,000.
At yesterday's pricing.
Right.
Nowadays,
Yeah.
it's gonna be more than 50,000.
right, so it's pretty much what we would have paid.
When we did the
The basketball courts were done recently.
But how long ago was the basketball court done?
5 years?
Right. So that everything went up since COVID. So
No, it was less, because I was already at my house.
Was it during
it
Yeah.
was before
The
COVID.
point is, we're still in the ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. And so this is something that has to get done regardless.
Yeah.
and then
If
we
we
go
take-
back to priorities, sorry.
Yeah. No worries. If you take the word pickleball out of the equation, we're talking about a tennis court resurfacing project that gets done every 10 years.
Same
And it's
thing.
been since
Exactly.
2005, so it's been longer actually. So this needs to get done
Either way.
either way. So we'll
Yeah,
open it
that's
up
exactly right.
for a vote.
Yes.
All in favor of moving forward with this project, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright, so this is gonna be passed up to the commission, for discussion up there.
And so the vote also represents the, allocation coming from reserves. That's gonna be your recommendation to the.
The same way that it was voted upon with the FERDAP grant,
Got it.
and then going from there, and then the commission can decide whether or not they wanna send it back out or go forward with the same, proposal that we got.
Another thing, Mr. Chairman, if at this time, I don't know if you're going to convene the committee again before the funding cycle, you may want to decide what projects you wanna go after with FERDAP. Because these meetings are very important to the state because it shows participation from the public. And you may wanna say, you know what, let's revisit the projects that were in that FERDAP grant that we couldn't do.
Absolutely, I think we all agree that we need to go after the lights. For
And I
the
would do
park's
a
entirety,
separate,
yeah.
I
Not just
would do
the
a
field,
s-
the entire,
For the
the
entire
entire
whole-
park,
Yeah,
the whole
for the park,
complex.
and I think I would do a separate motion on that, because that way, when the grant announcement comes in, and we can send the minutes to Ruano, our grant
We gotta
writer.
go hard on that.
And of course, the commission before,
So a motion
Give me a-
for, how do you want me to word it?
there should be a motion from the committee agreeing to which projects we should pursue with the next grant cycle.
You want, that would be done now in this meeting, or set
You
up another?
could, or you could set up another meeting, it all depends how soon the committee's gonna be.
Motion?
So, I need a motion for the next grant cycle, to say that we're gonna set priority for the lights throughout the park. Baseball field, tennis courts, basketball courts.
I'll give you the honor.
Need a motion?
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 Do I have a second?
Second.
It's a motion and second. All in
Third.
favor, say aye.
Fourth.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Alright, motion passes.
That was yours, buddy.
Unanimous.
Yolanda, do we have a person that handles all the grants here in the city?
We have a grants writer, and usually project management falls with
Does
my
he overlook it?
office and Penna.
Do they look into all the grants? I mean, does the
We
state?
have grant announcements wherever.
No, but what I'm
yeah.
saying is, because I see a lot, sometimes I see where the federal government and state try to give you money for the lighting, to replace all the lightings in all
Right.
the parks, and it helps the park.
Right.
Do they go after those
That's
two?
the agency of the state that gives it to you.
The
That's
state, but
FERDAP,
also the
yeah.
federal government does the same thing too.
We
You're
have
looking-
not been noticed on anything
You haven't-
available from the federal government. We have potable water money coming from the federal government, but we have,
Oh, I read a little bit
American
there. that-
Rescue Act money, but that's already, been set aside for infrastructure projects. by the
I
commission.
think I read, I don't remember, I read a while, but also a fair amount, give you money to replace all the lights and go with the LED lights on them.
I don't know if
I-
they draw
I
a
have
distinction between street lights and park
That
lights.
could be, I don't know,
Because
I'm
the
not
federal
sure.
government usually deals with like safety, security, infrastructure issues for the
Could be,
community.
it could be, I don't know, I'm not sure.
That's what the FERDAP grant is for.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a
To get
state, I'm
money.
talking about
But the
federal.
federal
Yeah.
government usually, the way it comes in terms of the money for these grant cycles, the feds gives it to the state gives it to the counties in the state of Florida. This one is coming directly from the state and it bypasses the county. So these are federal funds that are administered by the state of Florida,
I see.
by the Department of Environmental Protection.
Sounds like
When does
something we
the
can
next
research.
grant cycle start?
Yep.
Hopefully, we will be noticed anytime between July 12th and August 12th. That's usually the cycle.
So we just voted on giving that priority to
Tennis
Ruano
courts
to
and-
move forward with the lights.
and baseball.
So do we have, should we?
You should say the
We
whole
could reconvene
complex.
after
whole-
the grant cycle starts to make sure that we're,
Absolutely. And the grant cycles brings obviously a list of guidances that we have to follow. And they may tell you, this is what you can fund, this is what you can look at. They all come with instructions. If you qualify, and if you don't, you don't.
Mr. Ben,
Generally, they're good about that.
how much when was the last time the lights were done at the basketball courts?
1983 at the same
A
time.
long time ago. So would it be fair to say that those
83?
lights would probably be
God.
around the same cost as the baseball field? Or is
They're
there
good
less?
lights, huh?
Between tennis courts and basketball, you're
They're
looking
built
at
in the
probably
lots.
another 100.
Okay, so then with the 400,000, we could potentially fix all the lights in the park in one, alright, perfect.
ideal.
Cool.
Yeah, focus the whole amount on the lights, because we're
on
gonna
the
need it.
lights.
And I think, we're all in the same agreement here. That's just a big
And those
safety issue.
are, the lights are not, they're incidental to the principal activity of the park, correct? So we should be okay. I mean, you can't play baseball if you don't have
Lights.
lights. You can't play tennis in the evening because you don't have
Mhm.
lights.
Joe
so-
will be happy. No lights there.
John is always happy.
No,
No,
no, always at gym. Oh, I not working. No, nobody can come here now.
Every time he pulls the breaker, the hair on his head stands up.
It's a joke, I never pull the breaker because I don't have hair in my head.
Alright, so we'll set a date at a later time. We'll leave that pending for now, for the next
And by
meeting.
then we know if we got this grant, the last year's grant or not, if it was approved or not
Hopefully,
for the
yes.
state,
For the outdoor gym equipment.
for the rec.
Right.
Not the rec.
No, the Cooper Park.
Cooper Park.
For the replacement of that
Right.
aerobic exercise section there.
And then on tonight's agenda for the commission meeting, we are gonna be discussing as well, sending out, for RFPs for the gym equipment that we voted on to go with the new and used. So, correct me if I'm wrong, that was 5 years for a warranty, the same exact warranty for new and used, right? Cause we voted to go with
I
the-
believe we have the option of buying a 3-year or a 5-year warranty. The 5-year was more expensive.
No, that she said was included in the
Yeah,
5
I
years.
thought it was-
Included in the
yeah.
price.
And it was already included
Yeah,
in the
but we're
price.
buying it with the equipment, right?
Right.
But we had the option of 3 or 5, I believe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And the new equipment was something like
Right.
almost double the price of
And,
buying it.
and what we can do, and I would recommend that you think about it, is accrue, designate, and reserve from that capital outlay money that's there already in the budget. Because if you don't open bids until the center is open, it may take you to October. Juan, what's the estimated completion time on that project?
Jim?
Yeah,
Well, since we're 3 months behind, I would say 3 months forward, I would say
October?
October, November.
October of November, you're already into the new
Went from September to
budget.
November now.
You are into a new budget cycle.
God.
So I would recommend that as of September 30th, and I would recommend that to the incoming manager, make sure that money is accrued, because that way you have already the money and you don't have to disturb reserves. And you have the money for the.
That was that 120 that was set aside.
Exactly.
Like going into the next grant cycle,
Exactly.
set it
Excuse me,
aside
this is
again.
Dr. Hey, Dr. Mary, how are you today?
Alright, any further discussion? Any questions?
I had a
I'm doing
question.
well.
This is not relating to this, but relating revenue, which we've been trying to get more revenue. Have we ever done a
Oh
competitive
my God,
analysis?
Oh my, okay.
Say on
No worries,
like
we have the
the
memo.
summer camp, the
that you
cost for the summer
edited,
camp, the
going to
renting
the
of
commissioner,
the
we're gonna
fees,
approve
you
your
know,
fees
the
tonight.
baseball courts, tennis courts, just to see
And I'll
how
be in touch
we're
with
on
you
par
tomorrow.
with other, you know, cities, other places that have
It
these
sounds like a plan, all right,
Summer
Dr.
camp
Murray,
hasn't
thank
changed
you.
in, that
Okay,
was before
bye-bye.
even I took over, so I would say
Yeah.
It's a good question.
6 years.
If we've done any analysis to see where we are compared to other summer camps.
What we charging.
Price-wise, what we're
What
charging.
we charge?
You'd have
Okay,
to
so
find
we have
something
brought that
similar
up
based
in the
off your-
past, we have brought that up in the past. And your commissioner, with all due respect, it's very difficult to get fees increased here. Very, very difficult. It becomes, very contentious. And I think we have to raise fees, because we basically have a sitting service from 7:30 a.m.
To 6 p.m.
to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
What are they
You
And,
know,
and I think we run
the-
like one of the best
the
parks
best,
in,
the
in
best.
in the city,
And
right?
you're
We-
a
we turned out
product,
okay.
so we
Yeah,
turned
right,
out
exactly,
well.
right.
So-
But,
you know,
I think we're on the lower end of the pricing.
And you had
uh,
Jim.
residents
maybe
pay
even
a
lower.
nominal, residents pay a nominal fee, and
And,
we can't
and,
have
and
that
I'd be
anymore.
okay with, you know, leaving the resident rate or, you know, increasing it very incrementally, but the non-resident rate,
Listen, you can raise a resident date, and I get it. We all pay a mill of our taxpayer
so
dollars
we
to
charge more
fund
than that.
the
rec,
operation.
of course.
But summer camp is a separate activity.
Activity.
It's separate. It's a special activity.
Yeah.
It- but then you have
So we
specialized
need to
camps
charge.
that charge.
No, I
Just
but
like
I'm saying,
we would charge for the weight room, you know, even if,
Whatever.
like we would have to.
But it
because
becomes a very contentious
Yeah.
conversation.
And
It's
for the
one
record,
that has
this
to be
affects
handled.
you as well, because you live in the city and you have grandkids coming up, so
And you know what?
you're not just
I'm
saying we
willing
need to
pay.
charge.
No, I'm willing to
what-
pay.
And you're gonna be paying too.
It's a conversation we need to have. We need to
Yeah.
discuss the hours of the park. These are all things that we're gonna have to address at some point.
I mean,
Very
salaries go up, and if we're not making more money, you know, it's just our
Salary,
bottom
insurance,
line
everything
is,
goes up.
And
is
they go
going
up,
away.
you need to retain,
Yeah.
you need to recruit and retain good employees.
yeah.
And
That's
on-
another
and-
thing, yeah, it's actually.
And when you have a specialized service and you're dealing with a registration roster of 280 kids for summer camp, it's a huge responsibility. We have 140 kids after school, John,
Yeah, give or take.
give or take. See, I read your emails. So you have a huge responsibility and liability. So you need to attract and retain good people that will come there and treat the children the way we want to see the children treated.
After school care is free or they have to pay?
John, it's, I believe there's no charge to the
The
residents?
residence is $40.
It's 40, I'm sorry, a week.
A
A
month?
week, a month, I'm sorry, $10 a
Well,
week.
what I
Yeah,
was explaining,
You
Oh
can
my
compare
God,
that
the
to
price-
after school
crazy.
care.
That's crazy.
To
the
daycare,
pricing,
so it's.
it used to be free for residents.
Yeah, I remember that, but
Once we raised the pricing, because of the staffing, we were turning over staff left and right. It was hard to keep anybody capable. To $40, we lost like 30 kids on average per month in attendance.
Because they didn't wanna pay the $40 a month.
I didn't, but it was instantly.
I mean,
What was
it's
the numbers
that-
back then?
Wow.
Yeah.
We used,
Yeah,
when I first
exactly.
started at the
Put in-
rec, it was like we would start at like 125, and as the year would build, it would get to like 150.
My driveway.
Now we start at like,
And then you said you lost about 40 kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but they
but
weren't
yeah.
paying, because they
Right,
were
right,
free.
but now
then
you
they
pay
came
$40,
back.
so it pays
no,
up.
not
And then
necessarily.
After,
It's still less. It's less than what it was.
And
It balances out because now they're paying as
Yeah.
opposed to money-wise.
Yeah,
But initially, the reaction was.
In a way, it's better for you because you have less kids to
you get to
maintain.
offer a
It's easier
better
to manage
service.
And you can hire.
Yeah.
From
Better-
a
better
managing
quality.
perspective, yes, because less kids and I can hire
Better-
better quality, better staff to manage.
And that's what we had in the past.
You need to
We
look into
had,
that. That's
we
$10
had
a
maybe
week.
40
Oh,
or
God.
50 kids.
Cheap.
When my
Summers
kids were
For
growing
4
up,
hours, 4
we
hours?
had, and
Summers,
you
30
probably
a week.
remember when
Oh
your
my God.
kids were growing up.
yeah, there was a
You
lot
had-
more than 40, but
There
What?
was,
When-
well,
when you guys were
when Mandy,
kids.
my son, was going to the rec, I can tell you there were about 45 kids at best. That was, Mr. Fischel was still there. Yeah,
how old is Mandy?
Mandy's 43.
Oh, we had, Jim and Strick, and it was 100 kids maybe?
Yeah,
Maybe.
nah,
It started
I
to
don't
Oh,
grow.
it wasn't that many.
I just think.
A lot of people trickled in the
I think it was
afternoons
just, there
and
was
stuff
so
like
many
that.
more of us on the court at the
Right.
same time.
Yeah.
That it looked like a bigger number, but
But-
we get 110 now and it's like.
But listen, you bring up a
we
good
separate them
point,
in groups.
because, whenever you talk to people about spending more money, we really gotta get the word out and focus on what you're spending the money on.
Yeah, what
So
services they're getting.
we're not talking about, edging your lawn as an added service. We're talking about, in today's world, keeping an eye on your kids and keeping them safe and making sure that whoever you bring in as an employee to work for you is the same kind of quality kids that grow up to be, this guy and that guy and that guy.
Yeah, people who grew up at the rec and they come back and they generally stay with us for years.
They wanna be here
They
to
wanna
help
be
their
here.
community, and you don't keep people
No,
unless you pay
can't.
people.
Gotta hit 'em
And
over
we've
the head
10x'd
with
on services, we have a police officer out front.
bat. Assigned.
Yeah.
We're doing homework help. When I was going to the rec, there was no homework
No.
help. That wasn't the
Jim
case.
did that? No, Jim wasn't like that.
No.
Right?
You have
We
tutoring
keep
every day.
doing
You
more
have
and more and more and maintaining
Rosemary did.
the
Oh,
service
oh my
quality
God.
of
For
not.
$10 a week. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't
Well, summer-
find that
and
in.
No,
summer
no,
camp is
that's
$30
regalado.
a week for
I
residents.
say we raise your salary to $60 a month.
Thank you.
You're worth it.
gonna start eating Wendy's again.
Or bring Rosemary back.
So I think that, we need to start out by.
You need to bring that up to the commissioner attention.
I
Ivan.
believe that summer
Yeah,
camp
that's, come
rates
on,
and.
that's ridiculous.
should
Even
be
the rentals,
increased.
like everything across the board for the facilities, I
We
mean,
have tried, but it's.
the Renaissance Center, like, it's in the same city, it's
Yeah.
4 blocks away. To rent that is 4x, 5x, what it would cost, and I think the square footage is probably comparable,
Pretty comparable.
yeah, so,
But there's always been hesitation to charge residents more money for the service that we provide.
and
So
I
can we,
understand.
can we legally, so for the rec center, for example, can we legally charge more to non-residents to use the gym and all that? Cause I think that,
Absolutely, because residents are already paying, okay,
With
their
the-
fair
with the
share with
millage,
their
with the millage.
taxes.
right,
So if you really compare it, non-residents are paying the same amount of money that we're paying in our millage.
yeah.
So to be clear,
absolutely no doubt about
What we're talking
we have to
about in
raise
terms of
Increasing
residents getting
summer camp
increased is
fees.
summer camp, which is separate and
Some-
apart from the rec.
Exactly, exactly.
How many
Correct,
residents
They have a big gym on that.
come to
You're not allowed to
summer
go
camp?
anything.
You'd say most of them are non-residents, right?
Most
The
are
thing
not?
is, I would, yes, listen, we could be the best or not, but we're open every day of the summer.
10 weeks.
There's not many camps that are open from day one and we go to some field trips and they're like, you guys are still open? So, we're open till 6, a lot of them close at 4. You go to a specialty camp, they're open till 1.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of time that we're there, and you get a lot of camps, like, people come, we get an influx of kids, like, after, like, week 7, because a lot of camps don't even open in August.
Right,
So
they
we start
shut down.
getting a wave of, we consistently get registrations, but that August month, we start getting, like, it brings our numbers right back up to, like, midsummer.
So what can we do, like Alex was saying, to
Increase
compare,
rates.
but how can we get a gauge of where
A
our
comparison.
We do
rates
that
should
every
be?
couple of years. John has
Well,
done
we can
that
call-
survey.
Go to the different
What are-
parks and ask them what they do for the summer.
We can
What
call
do you
and
know off
find
the top
out.
of your head that other parks are charging for summer camp?
Like, well, City of Miami is much different, just because it's a whole, they do everything,
It's huge.
it's a huge thing, so it's like one big
Huge
project
program.
to them.
Right, so
But
it's
you have-
comparable cities.
Miami
And multiple
Springs-
locations.
What's
That's
Miami
what
Springs
I don't
doing?
know right off the top of my
Miami
head.
Virginia Gardens.
I
Springs,
think we have to look and
I
see
don't know that
maybe
they have a summer camp program.
because
They do stuff
The
over there,
person
like the baseball
paying
field and stuff,
is
between the
They do.
Springs
they're
and
looking at
VG.
what's
Oh, yeah, I would look
proximity.
either way,
Right.
Yeah.
but comparable. is
Hialeah
not-
Gardens is a good comparable as well. You gotta look at communities with the same
Yeah.
median
Coral
income.
Gable, I mean,
Coral
obviously Coral
Gables
Gable's a little
is-
bit higher,
is
but,
Because I
super
think of
high.
every little city, and it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Key Biscayne even is tiny,
Probably
but it's.
Sweetwater.
Got money.
Sweetwater,
Yeah, the
I don't know,
NBS.
Sweetwater has grown immensely.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
And it's FIU North now.
Yep.
I think if anything, raise the non-residents.
You
Yeah,
can
I
even-
Because like you're
But
saying,
Without
you're
a doubt,
gonna,
without a
you're
doubt.
gonna drop and believe it or not, even if you increase it by $15, which is not a whole lot of money, a week by $15, you're gonna see a drop in the participation.
Well, I
If
would
we-
say,
oh, yeah, we
we're
will.
increasing by 15, here's a list of your options.
Yeah,
$80,
that's what I was
100, here you
gonna
go,
say.
go call them.
Go call them.
Because if we stay comparable, like, I think, again, I haven't done this myself,
Yeah.
but I imagine we're on the lower end just because the rates
Oh, we're
haven't.
probably the lowest in
Yeah.
town.
But
So
even if-
I'm just saying, bring it $5 below, the next guy in line,
And we,
and,
listen, even a non-resident gets a break on the second kid, so you're not paying one,
Full price.
you're not paying
So a second kid
$90.
pay, second kid
Yeah.
pay $1?
No.
I mean, even
That's
if,
the
He's paying 10 a week.
The
you know?
8 kid pays $1.
even if there is a drop off, say there's a drop off, but
And
we
you make
end up making the same amount of money, their lives are easier. They're,
Yeah.
they're
No,
watching
And then
less
less
Take
money.
care
staff
of the kid,
possibly,
better
more
quality.
revenue.
Possibly more
Right.
revenue
Yeah.
for the city or,
But worst case scenario is the revenue's the same,
Yeah.
but now it's easier for them
It's
to look after
easier
the
to manage
kids.
field trips, it's
Right,
easier.
so,
Yeah.
It's not a loss, the quality of what we're doing
I mean,
becomes better
yeah.
and easier to
We
manage.
take these kids on field trips 3 times a week
Yeah.
over a 10-week period of time.
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
I'll bring that up
Three
in
a
the
week,
committee
yeah.
report
Wednesday.
tonight.
It's a separate cost.
But who
Yeah.
would we have to direct to do that analysis? Is that
Us,
something,
me, and,
So then-
and then I'll pass it on to John.
so would that have to come in the next agenda?
That
as
would have to
a-
come at the next agenda, and we can start doing the homework now.
Perfect. Alright, so in the next meeting for the commission, you'll hear that there'll be a
Yep.
directive to look forward into the the other
Another note
analysis.
on that is
And you
everything's
can
gone
actually
up
bring
too.
it up in
Yeah.
the
Summer
committee
camp,
reports to the
I've
next
been planning summer
Bring it
camp,
up and
the
then for a
buses have
future
gone
date
up,
to go.
the futures have
Everything,
gone up,
everything's up.
and we try to do it at cost, because I don't, you know, some places, it'll charge you $20 to get into Dave and Buster's,
Again,
and they charge you 40.
Like talking, I feel.
And that I know, because that I've looked at, and people I've known are like, what? We try to always keep it even, you know,
Not
not
with
always
us.
Jim always used to like keep it at cost, whatever it is, plus the buses.
No, you make your money off the registration,
That's another
like,
way you
yeah,
can
that's how
work
it
it out,
should be.
raise a little
With us,
bit
yeah.
that, and raise
The
the
field
trips,
trips.
the field
Yeah.
trips
That's
a
maybe
little
got
bit too.
call from the county.
And that compensates both.
The futures have gone up a lot.
And
No,
what's
but I know
the,
the
what's the
screen.
rate of kids,
Yeah,
do you
it's
say,
summer.
did you see a big drop off, like, how many kids in the park versus how many kids going on the trip? You know,
Depends on the trip, but most, if there's 200 kids at the rec,
on average, obviously, yeah, cause everyone wants the good ones, you know?
150 will go to Dave and Buster's.
That's crazy, that's a lot,
That's a lot.
that's a lot.
That's all
I
right.
hate to be a Dave
Imagine the
Buster's.
level of responsibility
Well,
that
look at the
staff
beginning of the
has.
summer
That's
last
why
year.
you gotta
I
concentrate
was
on
What's the ratio?
scheduling the buses based on
15 to 1.
Yeah,
the amount of kids that could fit on the bus. We used to just do like, oh, we're taking 150, but then you have a bus where there's like 30 kids, where you can fit
5
40.
to 12?
6 to 12.
And we were getting lines at the
Crazy.
rec, and like, we were getting complaints because we couldn't fill the seats, but
Yeah.
the buses are almost $300 now. And that's,
each trip,
and that's that I've surveyed it,
yeah,
and that's a company we've been with since I've been there, and it's cheap compared to, I've had to try to use a bus one time from another company, and it was almost double the price
yeah.
to go locally.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna recommend buying a bus, but we need multiple, like,
No, you need-
yeah, you need 3
no,
buses,
listen,
yeah.
Maintaining them,
Yeah.
and those things get beat up.
Yeah.
at least once a week, we take 150 somewhere.
Yeah.
Some of the trips were limited by the capacity of the location.
Of course,
So you can only take like Everglades, we can only take 60 a day. So we do a separate trip that could take like 90 somewhere else. And you get like 30 stragglers that come, but sometimes the kids don't all show up knowing that nobody's gonna be there.
Yeah.
And if they're not going, they won't come that day.
yeah,
But you still get another 30 kids that just stay back at the rec, which you have to staff also.
yeah. No, it's a lot.
Good talk.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not the
great
rec,
point.
Well,
it's
it's
the-
good because the residents don't know, and there's a lot that's being taken for granted. And I think we work miracles with our budget.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion, questions? Madam Clerk, next item? I think that might have been
Item 7 to
good
the
of the,
order.
anything for good of the order?
Oh, I
That
thought
was
we were
it,
there.
basically, right there. All right, next item.
Item 8, like adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Third.
All right.
Seven o'clock.
Right on the money.